This edition of Checks and Balances TV is brought to you by American Equity Investment Life Insurance Company. Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Checks and Balances TV. Today's program is entitled The Never-Ending Sequester. Will Congress finally fix our spending addiction or continue to kick the can down the road? So let's see how today's news may impact your financial future. As part of the fiscal cliff deal, Congress and the White House delayed federal spending cuts, known as the Sequester, from January 1st until March 1st. However, on February 14th, Senate Democrats unveiled their plan to delay the sequester through the rest of this year. But Republican lawmakers are opposing these plans. And with only days left until the dramatic spending cuts kick in, Americans are left wondering if politicians can solve this sequester ordeal for good, or if another short-term deal will delay these important decisions yet again. Okay, so what's really going on here? Let's check the facts using our checks and balances process. Rather than facing negotiations head-on, Senate Democrats proposed a plan to avert the sequester, at least through the end of this year. In their plan, this year's cuts would be replaced with $110 billion in spending cuts and new tax revenue split 50-50. The revenue would come from implementing the Buffett rule, as it's called, which caps deductions and loopholes for millionaires and requires households earning $2 million or more annually to pay at least 30% in federal taxes. The spending cuts would come from cutting defense spending and getting rid of agricultural subsidies. The Senate plan, however, only addresses cuts for this year. On January 1st, 2014, Congress would be right back to square one again, trying to avoid sequester cuts for the next 9 years. Republicans, however, are adamant that tax increases not be a part of the sequester deal. They're reminding congressional Democrats and the White House that taxes were already increased this year as part of the fiscal cliff deal. The 39.6% income tax bracket was added for individuals making more than $400,000 annually, and the capital gains tax rate increased from 15% to 20% for higher income earners as well. Because of this, the Democratic plan will be a tough sell, and some Republicans have already predicted that the sequester is going to happen on March the 1st. And even if Congress can agree on the proposed plan, it's still only a temporary agreement to keep the government running and, of course, spending more money. Okay, so now that we've checked the facts, let's balance this news using our checks and balances process to determine what action you should take today. The sequester got its start way back in April of 2011 when Standard & Poor's assigned the U.S. a negative economic outlook. The credit agency warned that a credit downgrade would occur if the federal government did not map out a clear and comprehensive plan to reduce the U.S. deficit by $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Then in August of 2011, Congress agreed to an increased debt ceiling deal in exchange for a cut of just $2.4 trillion from the federal budget over the next 10 years. The S&P responded with the downgrade of the U.S. credit rating from AAA down to AA+. The U.S. Congress Joint Committee on Deficit Reduction was put in charge of deciding what the $2.4 trillion in cuts would include, but they couldn't agree on what to cut. So, as a result, on November 21st, 2011, the committee issued a statement that said they would come to the conclusion that it would not be possible to make any bipartisan agreement available on the spending cuts before the committee's deadline. And because the committee was unable to decide on where to cut spending, automatic spending cuts, known as the sequester, were scheduled to take place. And the cuts would total $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years and be split equally between defense and domestic programs. The sequester was supposed to take effect January 1st of this year, and 1 year of cuts would total more than $85 billion. However, the sequester was delayed until March 1st of this year as part of the fiscal cliff deal. Congress has mere days to reach an agreement on how to stop and replace the sequester. And now it may be delayed yet again. Okay, So what's the bottom line here? Well, the bottom line is that the federal government must get control of its spending habit. Congress and the President keep delaying the consequences of it, and kicking the proverbial can down the road is not going to help. They've been kicking this can, by the way, down the road for more than 2 years, and they also haven't been able to agree on a budget for 4 years now. And quite frankly, the American people are getting tired of the trillion-dollar deficits and years of uncertainty we have ahead of us. Increasing taxes on the wealthy seems like an easy way for some politicians, but it doesn't address the core of the issue or the problem, which is the government is addicted to spending more than it brings in. It's time for a budget, one that's balanced and stays balanced. And it's time to tackle the deficit. The S&P warned that it would reduce the credit rating of the U.S. if they didn't cut $4 trillion from the federal deficit over a 10-year period. And the government has whittled that number down to $2.4 trillion and then to $1.2 trillion, and now we're talking about $110 billion. However, we are still a very long ways away from making any real progress. This segment of CBTV is brought to you by American Equity Investment Life Insurance Company. And now for Matt's weekly financial tip, tool, or technique. Politicians have gotten in the habit of putting off difficult decisions and avoiding the tough choices that come with balancing a budget. So don't follow Congress's example with your finances. By facing your financial decision-making responsibilities head-on, you can be in a much stronger financial position for the future. So tackle these 3 often avoided tasks as soon as possible. Number 1 is to pay down your debt and eventually pay it off. If you're currently overwhelmed by debt, making the minimum monthly payment can often seem like the easiest thing to do. But believe me, this strategy will end up costing you much more in the future. Instead of just paying the minimum each month, make a plan that tackles your debt head-on so you can pay it down and pay it off as quickly as possible. And avoid the high cost of compounding interest, and then you can create a much more enjoyable financial future. Number 2 is save for retirement. Unfortunately, most Americans across the country are not saving nearly enough for their retirement, including those who will be retiring soon. And by not saving enough for retirement, you're actually hurting your financial future. So no matter what your current age is today, start putting away as much money as possible for retirement right away. Your money will have more time to grow that way, and saving today may even help to keep your current income tax liability as low as possible if you put that money into qualified accounts like IRAs and 401ks. And number 3 is plan for your financial future. Many people have an idea about what their finances look like now and what they hope they'll look like in the future, but very few people have a specific financial plan to get them from point A to point B. By making a specific plan for your finances now, you'll be able to handle whatever life throws at you in the future. Plans for emergency savings, big purchases, and retirement are the keys to a stable financial life and future. It may seem easier to avoid thinking about financial problems now and just deal with them later, but that will only cause more stress and hardship. So face your financial reality now so that your financial future will be as healthy and strong as possible. Be sure to log on to our website and download our featured report, Financial Freedom Wake-Up Call, a free report that gives you the information you need to plan for, save consistently, and invest wisely for a secure financial future. And finally, remember that only you can control your financial future. You can succeed. You just need confidence and determination. I'm Matthew J. Reddick from Checks and Balances TV. Until next time, dump debt, invest wisely, believe in yourself, and make it happen.